Yes, yes, good. Okay.
Yes.
This is Farnaz Farotin,
She's writing and then she's talking, okay?
a young Afghan journalist living in Kabul.
Yes, please.
اونو رو کش کن اونو پرده رو کش کن کفشم اینجا صحیح نخورده
Yes, this is beautiful. This is beautiful.
I meet her while she's directing a campaign called The Red Line.
یک دو سه.
She's pushing women to take a stand and declare what they refuse to sacrifice if the Taliban regains power.
برابری جنسیتی خط سرخ من است.
Before it's too late.
I'm just curious what your personal fears are.
فعلا ترسمی است که نتانم کارم را ادامه بدم. ما قصا و یا با آزادی های نسبی را که در این مدت دارن با خطر مواجه ساخته.
I follow Farnaz from neighborhood to neighborhood as she meets women in their homes or offices, any place they're willing to talk.
که میگن من نمیخوایم مهاجر شم. اینی برای من یک خط سرخ است. پرتوشم تو؟ It's not okay.
A young woman directing a team of men.
هر چیز که دلت باشه باش که همونجا رو جور کنن.
Farnaz isn't exactly the traditional Afghan woman. But she's not a total exception either. When the Americans ousted the Taliban in 2001, they triggered a revolution for the country's women.
Hey guys, good morning class.
Good morning, teacher.
Girls went to school for the first time in years.
What do you want to study after English at university?
I want to be a journalist.
A journalist?
Yes.
Really? Oh, we should talk.
Since then, millions of women have pursued careers, broken taboos, and emerged as a visible force in public life. But all of the progress could be reversed. Now, the Americans are negotiating to leave the country altogether and bring the Taliban back into the government. At risk, all the hard-won rights women have gained over the last 18 years. So I'm here to ask women if they trust that a deal for peace won't cost them their freedom.
من افتخار میکنم که من یک مادر بودم که کوچی بودم در دشتا و صحرا بودم همراه اولادم و یک مادر شدم که هم پدر هستم و هم مادر هستم برشان.
This is Shamila. She's intimately familiar with the ways of the Taliban because she's married to one of its members. He beat her regularly until she left him.
دستایم کلکای مشکستان کلکای من با یک قسم فشار میداد دستایم که تاومید ما دفاع میکردم از خود باز دستایم یک کلکم هست.
Now she's a police officer in Kabul. I want to know what she would do if the Taliban returns to power.
Shamila, do you have thoughts of leaving the country?
والا روز بعد سرم آمده بله آماده است مگرم کس ندارم که کمکم کنه راهنماییم کنه حماییم کنه به اصطلاح خانم یک طالب گفته میشم اول سر مرا میزنه.
At work, Shamila regularly handles domestic violence cases. It's a reminder that this country, despite its changes, remains deeply patriarchal. She's flooded with calls for help from women who are being beaten and abused.
بله سلام شمیلا هستم از اوزی از بفرمایید. نه چرا پیسه هیچ یک روپیه تان مصرف نمیشه شما همه قکنین که همین خانم تا اوزه راهنمایی کنین و همراه ما باز در ارتباط باشین که من همراهش کمک کنم. خداحافظ جان. شوهرش مویای شکل کرده پایای دستایش سوختانده.
The majority of women here are already treated like second-class citizens. In the current negotiations, the Taliban is promising to protect their rights. But it's hard to see how, unless their views on women have transformed. I visit Malvi Kalamuddin, once one of the most feared men in the country. In the 90s, he headed the Taliban's religious police. They were responsible for things like flogging women if their burqas were not long enough to cover their ankles, and seizing and destroying people's televisions. In some ways, he's changed with the times. But when it comes to women, he refuses to acknowledge how the Taliban abused them in the first place.
What was the punishment for a woman going out in public without the hijab?
در وقت طالبان یک شالاق بود از چرم جور کردگیم همون شالاق از سر زمین میزد و یک آواز بسیار بلند میداشت دیگه وا میگریخت زدن کسی را نزده نه ما خبر شده نه بر ما کسی شکایت کرده نه کدام زن پیش ما آمده که مرا کسی زد.
So you believe that life for women under the Taliban in the 90s was just?
در این هیچ شکی نیست که ما به زن که احترام داریم حقوق زن ما میشناسیم حقوق زن خدا معلوم کرده در قرآن در کتاب ما و حقوق زن که پیش اسلام است در تمام دنیا نیست.
He's saying that he respects women's rights as defined by his version of Islam, which is precisely why it's hard to trust the Taliban when they promise to protect women. Take Zainab Fayez. She was the only female prosecutor in Kandahar until a few weeks ago, when the Taliban sent her a death threat wrapped around a bullet. She fled. I meet her in Kabul on her way to the Attorney General to plead for protection so that she can keep working. Later, we sit down at her relative's house, where she is taking refuge.
همه مشکلات از اون ذهن ما تاثیر میکنه روح ما تاثیر میکنه ولی ما بازم کوشش میکنیم که کار کنیم.
What do you think when you see the Taliban negotiating right now to be part of the government again?
ولی طالب است ثابت کرده که چه قسم انسانی بوده چه قسم مفکوره‌ای داشته ولی فردا به چی مفکوره‌ای خواهد آمد.
But when I press her on whether she plans to go back to work,
do you think you'll return to Kandahar?
She ends the interview abruptly.
She's not feeling well. Yeah. Okay.
It is something I see again and again. Even with the Taliban out of the government, some of the most courageous women in the country are afraid to share their full stories. And they have good reason. The truth may cost them their lives. But for other women in Afghanistan, the fight for their rights takes a backseat to their struggle for survival. I traveled to the conservative south, near Kandahar, where everyday life is disrupted by constant fighting. Payendo is living in this makeshift camp with her 3 children. She told me a coalition airstrike destroyed her home after the Taliban forcefully took refuge there. The attack killed her husband and at least 4 other family members. Women's rights are a faraway abstraction here.
Would you be willing to live under the Taliban again if it meant peace for your family?
What Payendo and others like her want is security, money, and more than anything, peace. From whoever can provide it.